Hello and welcome to Cyprus. Today is my 25th birthday and this is the 50th country I've been to, and I want to take you through the journey of how I did it. I'm making this video to walk you through my journey in travel over the last 25 years. The vast majority of these travels have been since I was 18, having only been to 7 countries before that, and actually first leaving Europe when I was 19. All the trips have been self-funded since I was 18 via my own business ventures, and I've actually done them alongside a 5-year university degree and 2 years of work, so I've never taken a gap year or anything like that. And every year, for the last 7 years, I've stepped up the game with the travels, so this is a story worth hearing. So let's begin. The first country I ever went to outside of the UK was France when I was 1 year old. This was with my family, and for the next 10 plus years we went on yearly camping holidays to France. So the second country I went to after France was the Netherlands when I was 9, and Switzerland when 10. I then went to the Vatican, Italy and Spain when I was 14, and Hungary when 15. This takes us up to 18 years of age. I've been to 7 countries and hadn't yet caught the travel bug, but I was very curious. I heard tales from my father and my brother about travels they'd been on when they were young, my brother going around Central America and my dad when he was interrailing, and this really sparked this curiosity in my mind. And so summer of 2012, after I finished school, I persuaded a friend to join me. We went interrailing for 4 weeks from Netherlands to Turkey, and this was an amazing trip. I met so many people. It really opened my eyes to the bigger world and how fun travelling can be. And so that was the beginning. So on that trip I went to the Netherlands, Germany, Poland, Hungary, Croatia, Serbia, Bulgaria and Turkey. What a trip it was, and that was just the beginning. As I mentioned before, all my trips were funded by my own businesses. So the first business I started was actually a chicken business when I was the age of 13, and so that provided me the pocket money I needed up to when I went to university. And it wasn't feasible to keep on running that business when I was away in Bath, when the business was on another part of the country. So I decided to sell off that business. But just before I did, I started working on a new channel, which was YouTube, and making cute animal videos from the interactions of my cat with the chicks. And I created quite a big channel around these interactions, which got millions of views, and I would monetize the videos and also license the videos out to TV companies. And that was a business I ran while I was at university as well. And so that provided quite a decent income, certainly enough to suffice the travels in the summers, and enabled me to not have to work in the summers but travel instead. Following the trip around Europe, my eyes were opened to the world of travel, and also my ambitions were further stretched. I'd heard lots of talk about Asia, and I really wanted to go and see what was going on over there. So the following summer of 2013, I went with my friend Philip to Thailand for 3 weeks. We popped over to Cambodia. Then I went down to Malaysia, and I saw a university friend who lives down there, and he showed me what Kuala Lumpur in Malaysia is all about, introduced me to all of his friends, and it was a really great experience while I was down there. And then I went over to China, and I was actually supposed to go and meet another university friend over there, but it turned out that he was going away with his family at the same time, and he wasn't going to be there. And so this threw me into the position where I was going to China on my own. The flights were booked, and I had no one to meet there, and it put me a bit out of my comfort zone, but this was a great opportunity to test out travelling on my own, and probably one of the harder places in the world to actually travel on your own. So there I was, in Beijing, China, on my own, had 11 days in China to see what was going on. So of course I stayed in hostels, and this was what opened up the world of solo travelling to me. I met a huge amount of people through the travels around China, and I was never really alone. I never had any issues while I was over there, even though very few of the locals spoke English, and there was quite a lot of challenges in terms of travelling. But I was with people most of the time. I went to Beijing, Xi'an, Shanghai, and it was a really great experience. And ever since then, I've actually always been on my own. For the last 4 or 5 years, I've travelled on my own to some pretty far-reaching regions. And the whole time, I stay in hostels and I meet lots of people, and that's a huge part of travelling for me. The following summer, I stepped up the game again. This time, 6 weeks in Central South America. So I started off in Trinidad and Tobago. I stayed with some family there for a few days. Then I went down to Peru, and I went around Machu Picchu and lots of things in Peru. I went to Argentina, Paraguay, and Brazil. And I was actually in Brazil for the final of the World Cup in 2014 on Copacabana Beach. Amazing experience, and I really like that region of the world. South America is a great continent. In 2015, I just turned 21, so that was my time to go to America. So a few weeks after I turned 21, actually, I went for a 5-week trip around America. I first covered the West Coast. I went from Los Angeles to San Francisco, and then I went over to the East Coast, and I then went from Washington to Boston. That gave me a really good kind of oversight of what's going on in the USA, and it was a very enjoyable trip. 2015 as well, I also went to Madeira with my family. It was a week-long family trip, incredible island, and I certainly want to go back there in the future. Alongside these 2 trips, I actually moved to Belgium in the middle of 2015 for a year as part of my university degree. So I lived in Brussels, and I actually worked for a company called Procter & Gamble in engineering for the year. I met so many international people there. It was a really, really cool year, but it also allowed me to travel quite a lot around Europe. So I went to many countries I've been to before, but I also went to Luxembourg with a few friends from home, and Romania with a bunch of friends that were living in Brussels with me. Also, as part of that year in Brussels, I went on a work trip to Czech Republic at the start of 2016. Very cold time to go, but a really interesting trip where I kind of checked out lots of new equipment that was being bought by Procter & Gamble for some operations they were doing in the north of France. In the summer of 2016, I did one of my longest backpacking trips to date, which is a 3-month trip through Central America. So I started in Cuba, then I flew over to Mexico, I went down through Mexico to Belize. I went to this small island in Belize called Cay Corca for their lobster festival. Then I went along to Guatemala. I spent a few weeks in Antigua. I learnt Spanish. I travelled around Guatemala, lots of fantastic sights there. Then I went down to El Salvador, around to Honduras. I went to a small island there where I learnt to scuba dive. And then I went down to Nicaragua, Costa Rica, Panama. Then I caught a boat trip through the San Blas Islands, which were amazing. Lots of very picturesque islands where just us, like the boat trip, were camping on the island, nobody else on them. And I called that round to Colombia, and I had about just over a week in Colombia before going on to the second leg of this trip. So I had 10 weeks in Central America. I literally flew into Cancun, and I had a flight out from Bogota in Colombia. So that was the only things I had booked there. That was a very, very cool trip that I'd certainly recommend to anyone looking to do a long backpacking trip. But then I actually flew to Madagascar with my brother, and Madagascar is probably one of the favourite countries I've ever been to. What really impressed me about Madagascar was the scenery. You've got a mountain range in the centre of the country, so one side of the country is rainforest and the other side is desert, so it's kind of very contrasting, incredible landscapes. The animals you've got there are kind of out of this world. You've got so many lemurs, chameleons, just species that often only exist on Madagascar, which is quite crazy. And I found the people very friendly and really kind of made Madagascar what I think of it as the best country that I've been to. And so that was the travels in 2016. Pretty good, yeah? 2017 was coming to the end of my university degree, so I actually went on a university ski trip to Andorra in early 2017. In the summer, I'd really been wanting to go to Africa because I'd heard so much about the economy over there, how it's been growing by 10% a year. I was very curious to see what was going on in Africa in terms of business. So I've been doing a lot of kind of networking and trying to find contacts that I could get in touch with and work with over there in Ethiopia. I ended up going out there with a bunch of people to start up a cafe in Addis Ababa. So we started up a cafe in Addis Ababa, and also I became a consultant for a coffee plantation in the southwest of the country. So I really did a lot of intensive learning about coffee, everything about coffee and the ideal learning conditions and how to make it. And I wrote a huge report on how this coffee plantation can go from 40% efficiency to 100% efficiency. So not only did I go to Ethiopia while I was over there, but I actually did a short trip to Tanzania. So I popped over to Tanzania and I climbed up Kilimanjaro. Amazing mountain and trip. The top part going to the peak was certainly very difficult. Early morning hike to 5,900 meters. Altitude sickness hit me, but I made it. And I also went on a safari while I was over there, and I had to pop back and forth for my university graduation while I was over there, so I popped back via Egypt. I went for a weekend in Cairo, checked out the pyramids, and on the way back I went to Dubai. I had a weekend in Dubai, went up Burj Khalifa. It was very hot, but great. Towards the end of 2017, I also did a short trip with my friend Philip. We went to Sweden, Finland. It was at the end of November, which probably is not the best time to go to those countries. It was dark and cold, but still really cool though, and it's kind of getting to the Christmas vibe as well. Last year, in 2018, I actually travelled to no new countries, but I also spent 4 months abroad at the same time. So I spent 4 months in Thailand in the end, and this was the beginning of a new period in my life. So in February of 2018, I was working for a company as part of an entrepreneurial scheme, and we went to Thailand for the month to an island called Koh Lanta. It was a software company, so we were able to work from Thailand and operate all the business from there, and also be in comfort, in warmth, by the sea. And this opened my eyes to two things. This concept of being able to run a business successfully while being abroad in quite tropical climates, and also these shoes. So these shoes were shoes that look like fish. I love the look of them. I wore them for a few weeks. A lot of people were commenting on them, sharing them on social media, asking me the name of them, and I really liked them and I found them very comfortable. I actually decided to bring them back over to the UK and create a business around them. So I created a brand, got a few trademarks, found a few manufacturers and built a whole brand around these shoes, which I actually ended up leaving that job in the middle of April to start this business in the middle of April and worked flat out on it for the whole of last year. But the idea was to create this business that allows me to lead my own kind of nomadic lifestyle abroad while running large businesses. So I actually left the UK in October of last year to spend the winter abroad in warmer countries. I prefer the summer to the winter, and so I actually went to Thailand for 3 months again, October, November, December. I spent Christmas in the islands, actually back on Koh Lanta where it all began in the February of last year. My cousins were there, and I went to Kapanyang for New Year's, which is pretty good. And then the beginning of this year, I moved to Indonesia for another 3 months. I was in Indonesia and Bali for January, February and March. Really fun time, got a lot of work done as well, met lots of great people, got in a good habit of waking up early, going to the gym or surfing, working all day, and then I would maybe go for sunset, kind of maybe go to a bar, and I was able to get into a great lifestyle of having a nice work-life balance, getting lots of work done but also having a great life. So this year so far I've been to Indonesia. I did a visa run to Singapore. I went for 3 or 4 days there over Chinese New Year. Met up with my friend Ken, who I actually climbed Kilimanjaro with a few years ago. I really like Singapore. And now I'm in Cyprus, which takes us to number 50. 50 countries by the age of 25. I always thought that was kind of a pinnacle landmark in my eyes, and I managed to achieve it one day in advance. But yeah, I hope you found that interesting. Maybe I hope it might have inspired you or interested you in kind of getting out a bit more. Be sure to hit me up if you've got any questions. And here's the next 25 in the next 5 years.